Welcome to Shattered Reality with your hosts Kate Valentine and Fahrusha. Prepare to have your paradigms shifted and your truths questioned. And now, Shattered Reality.
Well, another show, another day. How are you doing today, Fahrusha?
Kate, I'm doing quite well.
Good.
And I am happy to announce that this is our 58th show. We've been going at it for 3 years. Could you believe that?
Really?
Yeah,
Seriously?
seriously.
Wow. No, yes, that is hard to believe.
Yeah. And today, I'm going to slate as usual. Today is November 14th, 2017. And this month, we have a very interesting guest. We've had people on before, like Paul Smith, who is a remote viewer, and we've spoken a good deal about remote viewing. And if you recall, both you and our trusty engineer were very interested in how we might make some money with remote viewing. And I had tried to explain the whole thing down to the two of you and to our listeners. And it sort of got it across, but maybe not as well as the premier associative remote viewer that's out there. Mr. Marty Rosenblatt. Let's welcome him to Shattered Reality.
Okay. Marty, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. A pleasure to be here.
So I just think I should kind of mention how I know you. And I'm not sure. I think we may have met in person at one of the IRVA, International Remote Viewers Association meetings that I was at in where was it? Down south, not Baton Rouge, New Orleans.
New Orleans, yeah.
Yes, New Orleans. So I was down there at that one remote viewing conference, and Marty is a real stalwart in the International Remote Viewers Association. He's a longtime member, and he also, if I can get this correctly now, he is also the head of the Applied Precognition Project. He runs a website in addition called Physics Intuition Applications. And so what I would like to talk to you about firstly is how associative remote viewing is different from other kinds of remote viewing. And I know, but not all my listeners know.
And I don't either. So I'd love to find out about it, Marty.
Okay. Well, remote viewing in general gives you the ability, and this is a natural ability. I don't even like to call it paranormal anymore because it makes it sound like it's not normal. But it's a very normal capability that when you get quiet and set your intention, you can get information from a distance. Now, distance includes space and time, using capability that consciousness has, where simply by intending to send your consciousness someplace, that's one way of looking at it, you can pick up information about whatever is there. The military did this. I'm sure Paul Smith must have talked a lot about that because it was used by the military as well as lots of other people. Now, there are different forms of remote viewing where you try to get information at a distance, past, present, or future. Where associative remote viewing comes in, and I think let's focus on that, is an application of remote viewing where you, in fact, do want to make a decision among possible outcomes. Now, let me get a little bit more specific and connect these two. One of the ways we use this is in sports wagering or financial predictions. So let's just make a simple financial prediction. Let's say we want to know tomorrow if the excuse me, if the stock market is going to go up or down. So that's a binary choice, two choices, up or down. Now, how does remote viewing come in here? Well, let's say I were to take two possible pictures, since there are two possible outcomes. And let's say I were to associate the Eiffel Tower with up, and I had this nice picture of the Eiffel Tower, or I had another picture, say, of a whale jumping out of the water or something like that, and that might be associated with my down picture. Well, a remote viewer could be tasked to go to the Eiffel Tower, could be tasked to go to the whale. What we do in associative remote viewing is task them to go to their own feedback session when they're going to see one or the other of these pictures. Now, they're blind to all of this. All they're tasked with is describe and sketch the photo. We call it a photo sight because they can pick up sounds and smells. Consciousness can do use all the senses. Describe and sketch the photo sight that you are going to see in your feedback session tomorrow after the market closes. So the remote viewer gets quiet, does what we call cool down, opens himself up, and basically intends to interact with the feedback session, which is himself, in the future. Now, let's just say he says, "Oh, I sense water, I sense activity, I sense a big living form moving," and he draws on his piece of paper, some shapes and some wiggly lines like water, and depending on how long he works, he can get better at it. But already he's done enough so that when I see that session, and that's before the market opens, and I'm the judge, so I'll be judging his transcript, I would say, oh, well, obviously he's seeing the whale. The reason he's seeing the whale is because that's what I'm going to show him tomorrow, because down is going to be the actual direction the market goes. If the market were to go up, I would show him the Eiffel Tower. But the fact that he drew the whale, where did he get that information from? He went to the future when, in fact, I showed him the picture of the whale. That's associative remote viewing, because I get to make that judgment before the market opens, and then I can wager in the up direction.
Well, I will say that I have seen it work twice in sessions with you when you through one of your projects there, the Applied Precognition Project, you had some free sessions for practice that you opened up to members of IRVA and perhaps some other associations there. And I sat in on them, and we did them over the internet, and we wrote out our responses. And luckily enough, and it was maybe not total luck, but I got both of them and made $40 on the first wager that I bet on with you.
Isn't that cool?
That is so cool. And what is more cool is that you're not just using, in what you do, you're not just using one person's session. You have, however, in this case, maybe the sessions of 15 or 20 participants in the two experiments that I did with your group. And then you're also having more than just you decide. There are a couple of judges, as I recall.
Yes, you can do this in lots of different ways. This is called precognition. That's the way you pronounce it, precognition.
Precognition, okay.
So we're the Applied Precognition Project. In fact, our website's appliedprecog.com. And over the internet, and you must have seen an example of this, we have lots of different groups where people can do this. In Las Vegas, we do a lot of sports wagering, and the people make a lot of money. But one of the things you have to understand is it's not 100%. You don't win all the time. One of our mantras is wager wisely, because this is not, we don't know anybody, not even the best of the remote viewers. Like Joe McMonagle is usually at our conferences, and he
Yes.
does some great stuff, but he's not perfect either. So this is real. It is a natural capability. Time and science, of course, is beginning to spend more and more time in trying to unravel the mysteries of time. But it's obvious that you can access information from the future.
But Marty, the one obvious question is that then you're saying that the future is predetermined.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, okay.
No, I'm not. In fact, what this shows is actually even more significant than that. It shows that the future affects the present moment.
Yes.
Because in the example I gave you of the whale, the only way the remote viewer could have done so well was because the future feedback session gave him information about the whale. Think about it for a moment. Consciousness, this reality that we get through our conscious awareness, only really exists in the now. And it's in this now that you have your full and only awareness. The past is only a memory. And guess what? We know memories are not 100% either.
Right.
Well, the future memory, and there are books titled that, is what we do with precognition. We're like trying to remember the future which is going to come. Free will is in the now. The only time you get to make choices, the only time you get to influence what you want to think about is in the now. And I consider free will to be the absolute fundamental aspect of our being.
Yes.
Are there influences? Absolutely. From the past, and this is what's so magnificent, also from the future. So knowing that, you can put out positive intentions, which are going to go both ways, help the past, influence the future. And I'm spending more and more time getting into health now, because I believe once you really appreciate that all times are connected, consciousness kind of shows that everything is indeed connected. All of your conscious moments, past, present, future, are all connected. You can pay more attention to the now and put out these healthy thoughts, put out things with your own free will that, in fact, will influence you in a positive way.
I agree.
Well, don't you think it's possible, though, that, some of the things that you state are fairly, available to the general public, let's say the stock market. So perhaps, and I use this term loosely, subconsciously they're aware of certain movements, of some political aspects, some worldwide events, something that would influence the stock market, or even, for example, in a horse race. I mean, you have the morning line, you have various jockeys, you have various horses, and if they're able to access that information, now that's readily available in the so-called present, in the now, and then interpolate that into a potential, in other words, there's a million different outcomes, but, the collapsing state, of course, one of them is going to be the final outcome. And I'm wondering if the mind isn't that fast to access all this information that's also floating around to come up with the most likely outcome.
Well, that's interesting, because that is another model of what's going on, and I will refute that for you right now.
Okay.
And that is, this exact same idea has been done In fact, it was at Princeton University. There was a group there called PAIR.
Yes, we've had them. We've had Roger Nelson and, oh boy, she's going to be mad at me. All of a sudden, her
She
name.
better be. You better start accessing the future right
Yeah.
We had the, we had
The woman I know, and I
yeah,
know
it's
her
on the
name
tip
as
of
well,
my
and I'm
tongue.
blanking because. But let me make my point with them.
Yes.
What they did is something very similar to what I've discussed here, except they did it with pure random number generators.
Right.
And you can
So then
predict the random number generators where there isn't the kind of information out there that you're talking about.
How many numbers in a random generator? Do you have any
Well,
idea?
they did
Roughly, I
zero
mean.
and
Zero
ones.
and ones, and it's Brenda Dunn. Please, Brenda,
Brenda
forgive us.
Dunn,
All of a
exactly.
sudden, I kept thinking Mary, and it was not Mary anything.
It's Brenda Dunn.
Yes, she was on
And,
with us.
Maybe it's her nickname.
Exactly.
Excuse us, Marty. We're joking, but
Hey, that's good. We have to have fun at this. This is fantastic stuff. But
well,
also the other way to look at this is pictures. Remember, all the person is really predicting is a random picture. The association is unknown to them. When you see some of these comparisons, how could they know a random picture that they've never seen and do such a good match if it wasn't getting direct access from the future? And the future, and here's another word, and there aren't too many, but here's another word I want to put out there: retro-causation.
yes,
That's a new buzzword, and there's a lot of science going on now with that term. They used to do a precognition, but now they like to think about the now affecting the past, just like the feedback session was affecting the remote viewing session. That's called retrocausation. And that's what's happening here. That whale, the fact that the person saw it tomorrow, okay, caused the remote viewing session to come in. Now, one final word, and this is a word that comes from quantum mechanics, and this is what, in my opinion, is exactly going on, and that is the word entanglement.
right.
We are being totally entangled between the remote viewing session when you were tasked to describe and sketch what you're going to see in the future, and that indeed is entangled with that future time.
Can I add one thing, Marty, to Kate's question, which was very good, I thought, but that with some of the associative remote viewing, I don't know if you did this in the practice sessions we had with you, but with some of the associative remote viewing, it is triple blind. In other words, like let's say somebody like Russ Targ, he puts two pictures in an envelope and then he passes them over to Stephen Schwartz and he writes on one of them stock market up and on the other one stock market down. So they don't even know what the picture is and which one refers to which. I just picked those guys out at random because I know them and they're involved. So so it could be like triple blind, and therefore the original people don't even know. I mean, the judges don't know which one is which until they open the envelope on the morning of the stock market.
Yeah, but it still begs the question, though.
Really?
Yeah, it does. I mean, yeah, it does.
No.
You know, there was an interest. I've been trying to think of the physicist's name, but this might be actually much more to your point, and that is that he said that, for example, let's say there was a Big Bang. He assumes that everything, everywhere, occurs simultaneously, but the human mind cannot wrap itself around that, and so it invented time. In that case, if that man were true, then your theories would be valid.
And I accept that. I call that the eternal now. And I didn't invent that term. That term's been around a long time. There's so many different ways of looking at this. Frankly, the eternal time one, I think, is the closest to the way it really is, except somehow, in a way we can't understand, this creative creative free will idea has to get put in there. You know, so it's not just a one-liner, but I do believe it is all out there now, and we're creating it. So it's like the information. See, what we're really talking about is information. That's why, in some ways, it doesn't contradict what Einstein said about, nothing can travel faster than light. Well, that's sort of right if you talk about mass, but information doesn't really have, mass associated with it. And everything we're talking about is in like quantum information theory, and there are whole fields of people looking at that sort of thing. So your hypothesis that you could sort of from the past extrapolate into the future, I just think it doesn't hold water, if you will, because there are too many cases where it was totally blind. The only way the person can get it, we do everything we can, including some cases with independent judges, which are triple blind, except for a computer. The computer picks the two random pictures out of a set of 800 possible pairs, and nobody but the computer knows what those are. The remote viewer doesn't know it until he sees it. The judge does see it because he has to see the two so that they can wager. But there's no way that you can extrapolate that picture from the present, since it's randomly done by a computer.
Well, it's just really fascinating stuff. If our listeners, and I poorly described it on another one of our episodes, but if a group, this is the thing about remote viewing. I love remote viewing. I've been doing remote viewing for over 10 years. I've studied with 3 or 4, probably 4 or 5 teachers at this juncture, and I really enjoy it. But it's something that must be done in a group.
No.
You can do it by yourself, because I haven't figured out how yet.
Oh yeah, we have now in our group over 800 members, and there are about 100, I would say, who are active doing, they listen to the discussions, and we give webinars and stuff like that. And there are probably about 100 or so who are active in our various groups. We probably have about 15 active groups between sports and financials.
Right.
And most of them are doing this by themselves, some with independent judges, and they send their transcripts, everything's done over the internet. We do tasking over emails, but then once a person gets a tasking online, they click and they get a coordinate, and then they do their remote viewing session on their own. You can sit down quietly. You've got your coordinate now. You sit down quietly. You do your remote viewing session, and then we ask you to upload it to our server.
Right.
Okay. And so we keep track of everything. We're really big on statistics because we want to find those people that are very good at this. And we have an associative company called APPI. It's like the App Institute, where we have something called Precog Pros, and we actually give them a stake and become partners with them.
Yes.
So once we identify someone as being good, we'll basically make them a professional, and we'll set up an even partnership with them. And all of that information is on our website.
Repeat it again for our listeners, because we want them to go to it as well.
Although if we really
I'd love them to. Sure. AppliedPrecog.com. So the word applied and then precog, no space, .com. And they'll see everything there.
I think you misunderstood what I was saying, though, Marty. I mean, not drastically, because that's how I participated in the 2 practice sessions I did with you. I was sitting at home, in the groups that you offered through IRVA, I guess is how I got to it, and I came on there and did two sessions with you and the group. But what I meant was when I did study remote viewing and practiced it with you, and I studied it with others. It's always helped me. It's always upped my psi potential, so to speak. That because I work as an intuitive, that's my job.
Right.
So.
Right.
So it has helped me, and that's why I've continued to do it. But even in the manner that you described, the putative remote viewer is participating with a group. In other words, they're getting their coordinates from you or your organization, and then they are uploading their session. Now, they're doing it alone in their home, but it's not a singular activity as opposed to, let's say, me reading your cards would be a singular activity.
Right.
You see the difference of what I'm saying?
I do, and you're exactly right. In fact, as I said, we have 15 or so active groups in exactly the sense that you mean, and you are part of that group. And you make your own individual prediction, but then also after someone like myself, who's a group manager, looks at all the different predictions, we will actually put out a group prediction.
Right.
So what you're saying is right on.
Well, I'm sure you're aware too that Wall Street hires pretty advanced mathematicians, and now they will predict various outcomes in the stock market based on statistical analysis. Do you think that they're actually just using math, or do you think as a group they're starting to, as you said, this cognitive ability is inherent in humans, so you think that perhaps they're accessing that in addition to having some really pretty cool statistical analysis?
Well, I'd say there's both.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think so.
there's some funds that are really into the heavy mathematics and
Yes.
predicting things and all that.
And they're fairly
But I
accurate.
would think there are other funds out there that use traders, and even though they might not say it, but
Yeah.
their traders are basically using their gut, using intuition of some sort.
Exactly. And I think when they say using your gut, they're actually accessing what you refer to as an innate ability.
I totally agree. Exactly. Yeah.
Hedge funds do use remote viewers, and I know some of them that work for hedge funds. On the other hand, some funds just use quants, which is what you were talking about. I guess that's the name of the field of these advanced mathematicians are generally called quants at their offices.
Do the hedge funds that you know about, are they public? Will they acknowledge they're using remote viewers?
I would refer you privately to, after the show, to the remote viewers that I know that do that for money. And I know you know these people, so I will refer you to them rather than outing somebody in public. I mean, I don't know what's private and what's public, so I would rather keep my mouth shut. But I do
think
know
that's good.
I do know beyond the shadow of a doubt that there are people who are employed by hedge funds to predict things. And I do recall that Russ Targ and Stephen Schwartz, when I studied with them, that they were talking about, the silver futures, and that they had not a binary model, but a four-part model. Goes up a little, goes up a lot, goes down a little, goes down a lot, and they did quite well with it until they got bored or something, and then they lost the plot, so to speak.
No, that's exactly right. Russ Targs, he was like the first one to do that in the silvers market. He made the Wall Street Journal on that, but then tried it again. He said he got too much pressure from the investors to do more than they were doing at the original one, and then it didn't work well. And Stephen Schwartz was successful. I think he was the one who stopped just because it was, the way he put it, too much work. And he might have gotten a little bored. And, he's not one, that was after the money per se. And I think he had made his point. You know why I'm doing all of this?
No,
and again,
why we're going
it's not for the money.
Ask you.
It's not for the money, but it is for the money. And let me explain why. I want to have a lot of people make a lot of money on this so society will wake up to the reality. The information we've been talking about has been out there forever. Oracles of Delphi, the Bible has all kinds of examples of precognition. And yet our society and science, which really frosts me as a scientist, refuse to acknowledge that consciousness has these kind of psi capabilities. Well, if money talks to society, let's just face it, that is our society.
Materialistic.
Well, yes.
Say that like it's a bad thing.
Well,
It's a good thing.
and
I'm with you, Marty.
yeah. And so if we can get a lot of people doing this and making money, science will now start investigating it to try to understand it better. And also, one other aspect of this, the people who get into this, has certainly been my experience, and I don't think it has to be this way, but it's in my experience, become more deeply spiritual. And you know what? I would like to have those kind of people have a lot of money, because they would use it in much wiser ways than, a lot of the others who are, say, purely materialistic, which don't have kind of a spiritual edge to them, the spiritual side.
Yes.
That's what's motivating me.
Well, that's very cool.
But
That's very cool.
in a way, you're almost going backwards in time, if I might say that. You say that science does not recognize these abilities, and you're quite right. But when was that turnover? It must have been the 1700s, because philosophy was the love of knowledge. And that's what started during the Renaissance, the whole European investigation into the so-called sciences. Do you have any idea, or do you have any thoughts about where that? I mean, prior to Newton, I would say it was pretty philosophical and pretty religious. And after that, with cause and effect, it seemed to switch into, you don't have a cause for that effect, and that effect doesn't happen.
Yeah, that was an interesting switch.
Yeah.
And it may very well have been what was called the scientific revolution. Science did become, and I never would want to take anything away from science and the intellectual part of us. It's just that we've lost that balance.
Yeah.
We've lost the balance between the intellect and the intuitive. But science became, and maybe it was the Copernicus revolution was another time, just about the time frame you're talking about.
Right.
It became so popular that this other side, and when the Parapsychology Association was investigating all kinds of things back then.
Right.
But they got sort of dwarfed by all of the great accomplishments of science, which are continuing to this day.
Right.
Well, I think that we sort of have to draw a difference between science and technology, and also between religious and spiritual. Because prior to the Copernican revolution and Newton and so forth, religion was dogmatic, and not too many Gnostics around to be spiritual about it. Religion was in the Western world and in the Judeo-Christian heritage, including the Islamic heritage, we see a paternalistic sort of hierarchy having us being told what to think. And that's rather different from spiritualism. Or I don't mean spiritualism like ghost. I mean being spirituality is what I meant to say.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So how did you get into all this anyway, Marty? It's sort of a really interesting field.
Well, for 35 years, I was a classical physicist doing computational physics, simulating nuclear weapon effects inside of jet engines, high energy physics.
Wow.
But before that, okay, I'm going to mix this up, but you'll get it.
Okay.
I was always interested in, as a child, science fiction and advanced stuff, and used to read about these miracle stories that these yogas and gurus would supposedly do, and I never knew what to do with that, but it was always interesting. And then the imagining of science fiction. Now I'm a scientist, and I have clearances because we used to do, like I said, nuclear weapon effects work and things like that. So I had contact with the DIA. And I see this article by Hal Puthoff and Russ Targ, early 1970s, on remote viewing. and the fact that they had to sort of invent that word because they couldn't use psychic phenomenon, I went to my DNA contacts and said, God, you guys need to know about this. It turned out later I found out they were funding Hal Puthoff and Russ Targ, and they sent me to meet them. So I actually met them in the mid-'70s. I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was after that first paper came out. And so, I've never lost. And those guys were so impressive. They did the first real science I ever saw on this subject. And basically their studies basically proved it, with odds against chance of well over 1 out of a million, that sort of thing. Where prior to that, what did you get? You get these psychics who would give you their yearly predictions, but they would never come back and give you any kind of feedback, what was their percentage hit rate and all that. But these guys were doing all that. It was very impressive to see science take on this field.
Yes, indeed.
So when I got at the end of my sort of classical career, I was in a position where I could do what I wanted, which is perfect when you're, near retirement. I retired relatively early. And this is what I got into. I started a company called Physics Intuition Applications. That's defunct now. And now I'm totally within Applied Precognition Project and this APPI. And I'm just having a great time, It's just so interesting to be at cutting edge. I was at cutting edge in regular science for my 35-year plus career as a classical scientist, and now I'm probably in my 15th year in this I don't know what you call it, precognition, retrocausation field, consciousness. It's really about consciousness.
Yes.
Would you like to have my pet theory?
Yes.
Absolutely.
About how this?
Yes.
Would you really?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Have you heard of vacuum energy, 0-point energy?
Yes, 0-point
That was
energy.
Puthoff,
Yes.
right? Was really the guy who got into that?
Hal Puthoff.
Yes.
Now, isn't that interesting?
Yes.
That after he left SRI, he started a company and probably a few other people, but what he got into was 0-point energy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 0-point energy, as you probably know, is this bubbling energy down at the smallest scale that you can imagine. So no matter where you are, at whatever time you are, the one thing which is always around is this 0-point energy field, which is at any point that you go down to, you will get these huge amounts of energy. Really huge energy densities on the order of what goes on when you set off a nuclear explosion. Okay. So we're sitting on this potential well of huge amounts of energy, but it's constant. Kind of if you go down to the deepest parts of the ocean, the pressure would crush you if you went down there suddenly. But little fish are down there and they wag tails? They move their tails
like
and they can move along just fine because it's the changes in energy and the changes in pressure that matter. Okay, that field, in my opinion, which is on the basis of everything in the physical world, is the interface between the physical and the non-physical.
Cool.
And by non-physical, that's another word for the spiritual we were talking about, the world of pure information. And I think it's through this interface that all the magic is done. In other words, the magic is not really done in the physical world. It's like you go down with your physical body, which is intimately connected with the 0-point energy. You go across into the spiritual world, which has access to everything immediately. That's the eternal now kind of concept. And then you can go wherever you want to. You can go back up then to your feedback session, experience it, go back down, send the information back, and you're connected. And all of that, of course, is happening instantly. But the intermediary place is this zero-point energy field, this vacuum energy field.
That's very fascinating. That's a very interesting proposition you've put forth there.
Has anybody ever followed up on Hal Puthoff's theories?
On Hal Puthoff's what?
Theory.
Well,
I mean, he is, to me, I way past my abilities, but from the little I've read about zero-point energy, it seems like, someone who's just starting out in physics would be all over this.
Well, it's well past that. Zero-point energy is not debated. That part of quantum mechanics and all that is very well kind of not only established, but he and so many others are working to find practical applications. In fact, I know, this is public, he has contracts with NASA to look at advanced propulsion systems. Now, think about if you could have a propulsion system that would use zero-point energy off, say, the skin of your spacecraft. You wouldn't have to carry any fuel.
That's terrific.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the sort of thing that they're talking about. And I would think advanced technologies would have solved these problems. People are right now trying to get what's often called free energy, and where they're getting it from is this zero-point energy field. So people are working this very aggressively now.
Cool.
This, I tell you, Hal Puthoff almost seems like a mystery man to me. Like his name pops up here and there, and it's like, how can one person have been like all over the map doing all these things? And you never see a picture of him.
Oh, I've met him, but I never seen pictures of
I
him.
understand. No, I'm listen. I'm from a very naive viewpoint here. I am not questioning this. I'm just telling you from my viewpoint. Like, it's like, who is Hal Puthoff with all these great ideas, and how come I've never heard of him? It seems that way to me. Like, this is just a phenomenal mind, and he just is he being tamped down by the government like the way Tesla was? Is that possible?
Okay, so I mean, I don't know if you're.
I'm sorry. I'm way
or not.
No,
not
at
you
all.
just brought up.
Okay,
I am far afield.
Can I interrupt here for 1 second? Because
Sure.
when I interacted with Marty on the internet and invited him to be on the program, I've only met Hal Puthoff once at the IRVA convention, and I would not say I know the man. I did speak to him briefly, actually, about being on Shattered Reality Podcast. But in any case, when I did speak with Marty or write with Marty on the internet about coming on, I had mentioned to Marty that one of the subjects I was planning on asking him about had to do with one same Hal Puthoff and the To the Stars Academy, and his standing on the stage there with Tom DeLonge of Blink 152 or 158. What is it? I don't know. I can't recall. In any case, he and about 6 other scientists of high repute were standing on the stage with this former rock star, and it left a lot of people out here in the, let's say,
more serious
paranormal world wondering what the hell is going on. And we did ask our last guest, who was a second-time guest, Dr. John B. Alexander, about what was going on, and he didn't have too much to say about it, but he said to be careful of investing in the in the company because you might lose your shirt. But he didn't have much to say about what the heck they were doing. I actually called Puthoff's former partner at SRI, Russ Targ, who is a friend and a friend of the show, and he didn't have much to say about it. So I guess we're asking you now, Marty.
That's so funny. So I guess we're all in the same place. That is what I wanted to bring up.
Yes.
The fact that Hal is involved in that gave it, for me, enormous credibility.
Yes.
And I just saw a film. I mean, like just now, Unacknowledged. Have you heard about that one?
Yes.
No.
That's Greer. And Puthoff was actually in that for a short bit, which I've now come to believe the UFO phenomenon is absolutely real and all of that. The To the Stars, just because of my great respect for Hal, I actually did invest in it. Really, not enough money that it matters. I invested in it to show my support for it.
Right.
And yet, a lot of people have done a lot of negative stuff and told me about this, because now I'm talking about it with, friends, associates, and they say Tom DeLonge is into this idea of negative
Yes.
UFOs.
Yes.
And I happen not to believe that, because if they have the capability to be here, notice they're here, we're not there, they could have destroyed us long ago if that was their desire. And that was what Greer says. And after listening to this, his Unacknowledged, okay, so I'm past. I now accept UFOs are here, ETs are around. The big question, and I think this is why both Russ and John Alexander, who I've worked with both of them, they've both been at our workshops and
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah.
Are probably, or maybe, I don't know, in the same place I am, because I don't quite know how to put that together.
Right.
I would like to think that they are both part of a positive disclosure, where things like free energy, and they said, wait for future announcements.
Yes.
So I'd like to think that Tom DeLonge has changed his opinion, and it's the scientists in that group. And notice there were the head of the Skunk Works, previous head, who had just left his job, was there.
Indeed, yes.
And, so they must have known about this deep conspiracy, which is the way Greer puts it out. I mean, it's hard to imagine a worse conspiracy the way he puts it out. And that's the part of that Unacknowledged film. I don't know how much, to take quite as deeply as he wanted to take it. But what I'm saying is I can't give you any more information on that because I don't know.
Okay.
I would like to think Hal is still pure.
Yes.
And hasn't been
corrupted,
threatened in some way. Well, corrupted, right. But it might be threatened, because that was one of the...
This is the way I look at it, and maybe Kate agrees with most of what I have to say. First of all, I have to say I don't have a dog in the race in terms of what happens with To the Stars. I'm not for it. I'm not against it. I am an observer at this juncture. To the negative side of it, people are saying that Tom DeLonge is apparently going to take a big salary off of this. I don't know why he would need to, and I don't know if that's true. The other part is that it's a three-part deal, where one part is entertainment, the other part is research, and the other part is education, or the disclosure part of it. That's the way I understand it. Now, Greer, on the other hand, believes that the ET contact is all positive. And Tom DeLonge has written science fiction novels where the ETs are negative and hostile, and people are afraid that for whatever reason that the people who have come out with him on the stage, and I don't believe this nor do I disbelieve it, though I'm inclined not to believe it entirely, but these people believe that this is a government psyop to make you afraid of ET should ET show up. And the three of us here, our engineer, Kate, and myself, we're all experiencers. So we do believe something is going on. Now, in terms of it being ET, in other words, some ship from Zeta Reticuli or Alpha Centauri, hey, I don't know. Is it different dimensional creatures? that probably they are on a different dimension, and that may be the way they get here so quickly if they are coming from Zeta Reticuli. Or maybe they're just endemic in our own atmosphere. Maybe they're like Jack Vallée seems to think, alternate type of creatures that may be within our own sphere. They also could be people from the future, though I'm not clear about exactly how that works. But this is just to say that I don't really have a dog in the race, but it would seem that DeLong, as you had mentioned, and Stephen Greer are on opposite poles. And what I would say to that is just like, let's say the United States may have other countries around that are friends and enemies, ET doesn't have to be all one thing, does it?
No, I agree. And I still lean towards the side that says, and this is what Greer said in another piece, that private industry is going to have to bring out these free energy ideas. And I'd like to think that's going to come through something like To the Stars.
Yeah,
but we have to wait. We'll have to wait and see what they do.
We have Elon Musk and Bob Bigelow, who are trying to bring space travel to private industry, I would say, and probably some others.
Yeah, but J.P. Morgan shut down Tesla because it was free. And I think the same thing is going to happen with this. But eventually,
to the electric car for many years.
But wait, let's just stop there for a minute. Because for me, and I think so many people, I got Greer's point, which was it's the free energy issue that's more important than the UFO issue. The worst scenario is they're going to use the bad UFOs to take control of the whole planet. And I don't know.
Maybe they already have,
Oh, geez.
But I'll tell you, I'm going to just do an interesting side note for you, Marty. This is something for you to think about. A good friend of mine had been abducted and actually never came back. But before she left, she sort of paid me a visit, which scared the bejesus out of me. I actually fainted. But she said the way that these people traveled was that they had no ships, that they would just access their own mind and become the ship. And so if she were, and this is a person who had no background in science whatsoever, and she used to go into this in great detail, but so that would actually speak to your point. That,
absolutely.
And so you might be interested in that. That's just
we have
for your
had.
interest.
Well, go ahead if you want.
No. That was it. It was just a small.
Well, you have to
anecdote.
realize that I come from a place, and I keep the same theme now. It's probably 3 conferences ago that we first put it out there, and that is consciousness is fundamental.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
It is this consciousness field that is what is transmitted through the 0-point energy field. It's consciousnness itself. So the idea that you're talking about, I totally resonate with. And you can do that. There are these, and they're just so unusual. And yet it must be a natural characteristic if some people can do it. And you hear all these stories where people do things. At our last conference, I saw someone I wish I had seen it and videotaped it, but I know she couldn't do it manually. She bent a rod. We've all heard of spoon bending parties.
Absolutely, yes.
So at our last conference, I had a spoon and rod bending conference. So I had some rods there. And the psychic detective, Nancy the Tuarte, turned this rod into a horseshoe, literally. And so the powers of the mind are incredible. And I've seen experiments with manifestations that look physical. They weren't really in this case, but the example you gave, I believe. I want to throw out one more thing, because I'm about to give a lecture, in fact, tomorrow, on quantum computers. And that is the new wonderful thing which is going on. Universities are competing. I made a chart of the dates. The big thing that you use to count quantum computers are called qubits, the quantum bit sort of thing. And it goes on an exponential curve, just like a lot of other things. And we're going to be up to 1 trillion bits within about a million years, about 50 years. Okay, a trillion bits. That's like cells in our body. I'm beginning to think our nucleus connected with these things called microtubules, and there's a guy Hammeroff and Penrose who take the point of view that we are in fact quantum computers using these microtubules. I believe that. I believe we're going to get to a point where things like artificial intelligence and quantum computers are going to come together.
You're making
One
my
of the
mind
things-
hurt, Marty.
I know, because what does this all mean? And already people are talking about worrying about artificial intelligence. We've all seen movies where they take over the world, again, scary stuff. But I don't think it has to be that way.
Well,
But we've got to get our psychology together. We've got to just become better people.
I think we need some safeguards too.
you like science fiction, right, Marty? And,
Love it.
Yeah. Well, Dan Brown just came out with a book that I've just finished, Origin. You will love it. It's all about. He actually combined a quantum computer with a. I don't know, just a regular, I guess, like a sort of a super crate type computer. And he invented, instead of one computer, he called it a bicameral mind. So just like the human mind is right and left, that's how he integrated these two parts of his computers. It's a phenomenal idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm writing.
Origin. It's great.
I love it. But
It's a
let me
great
tell
book.
you, I've actually gone one step further. I have down below the ZPE level, there's this universe of collective consciousness. So it contains everything.
Wow.
Well, if you break those up into, let's say, people, all of us together can be viewed as a network of quantum computers. And all that is, the universe of collective consciousness, is like the supercomputer.
Oh my God. Yeah, my mind is hurting.
Yeah, and it's changing.
Wow.
You see, that's what's so beautiful. As each of us change, the supercomputer changes.
Wow.
So we are creating parts of this giant quantum reality.
Universe. Yeah, this universe or multiverse, as the case may be.
Wow.
Well, this has just been totally fantastic and interesting, Marty. And I just want to close with the idea of finding out if you're going to be at the IRVA convention in Las Vegas next June, where the SSE is joining together under John Alexander is hosting it. Are you going to host an ARV session before or after?
Right before.
Okay.
We've set up ours so it goes Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then the SCE IRVA conference starts Wednesday. So people could do both. And we did that on purpose so they could spend 1 week. You travel, you come in on Saturday night, you stay the full week, you go out the following Sunday, and you can see both.
Well, I hope to be seeing you at all three things, so to speak, even though it's two things are combined and your thing is before, and it sounds fabulous. So why don't you just repeat repeat your website and repeat how people can contact you if they're interested, etc.
Okay, that's beautiful. Yeah, the website is appliedprecog.com. So the word applied and then PRECOG.com. And if you go there, there's a way of sending messages which go to our organization. But if anybody wants to, they're more than welcome to contact me. I'm an email person, Marty, MARTY, at p-i-a.com.
Well, when we put up this broadcast on the internet, we will include link to your site. It will be a link from our site to your site. Okay?
Beautiful.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for such an enjoyable discussion. I really enjoyed it. And
Well,
I'm going to go
good.
home and take an aspirin.
And we hope to have you on again. We hope that you enjoyed us on Shattered Reality. So with that, we're going to say goodbye to you and continue on to our Listener's Corner. Thank you, Marty.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So wasn't that fun?
Yeah, it was.
That
It
was really like mind expanding and interesting, and really started out at the small level and just burst out into a much bigger
universal
sphere.
response.
Yes, it did.
Yes.
So now we're at our point where we're going to talk about our listeners. And we have some really wonderful listeners, some of whom have been experiencers. And I wanted to mention two different women who have been on our Listeners' Corner. The first one is June Ponte, who was on a few shows ago with her UFO experience. And currently, and I realize that a lot of people are not going to be listening to this show immediately after it's published, so you'll just have to check out what's going on at this place at that time. But currently, as of the middle of November 2017, June Ponte has an art show going on at the Artery in Milford, Pennsylvania. The Artery is an art gallery on one of the two main streets of Milford, PA. And I think it was quite a good show. I did manage to get out there and see it, and I want to congratulate June on her work. Now, moving on to another one of our listeners, we have Diane Waybright. Do you recall Diane also had some UFO experiences in her life, and is a real consciousness pioneer, somebody who really is trying to promote the concepts of consciousness. And she's an artist as well. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
They're all artists. I mean, the people we've had on, most of our listeners that have been experiencers are also artists. Anthony and June and Diane, and even me. I have a master's degree in fine arts. So
it makes sense.
And our good engineer here, Bill, is a fantastic musician.
Yeah,
so,
but I can't even draw stick figures, so I'm sorry.
well, you're a special case, and we love you anyway, Kate. But
I can't sing either.
no, I can't sing either. But that's
No, I can't draw. No.
draw. I can do.
I
Sing.
used to write fairly well.
I can sing, but you don't want to hear it.
No, I don't. No.
But now here we go with Diane Waybright's latest creation here, and she's an extremely creative individual, and she has illustrated a children's book, and the name of the children's book is "Imagine If Thoughts Were Balloons,"
Okay.
and it goes through, it's really for little kids, probably kids who can't actually read it to themselves, but it's a beautiful color book.
Yeah.
Where we see it's a large scale, large format book, and I'm gonna just read a little bit of it, and you'll have to buy the book in order to see the pictures that she drew. It was written by Rico Vanvenuti and illustrated by Diane Waybright. So I'm going to read a little bit of it here. Where do thoughts come from? Those things that you wonder. Like, why is the sky blue and what causes thunder? Or where does the sun go when everyone sleeps? And why do small critters give people the creeps? Do they come from a room somewhere locked up in your head? From up in the clouds or under your bed? Are they just words and pictures that float up in space, circling the planets or standing in place? Are they given to you by your father or mother, an aunt or an uncle, a sister or brother? Are they something you get when you're glued to a screen, from a book that you've read, from a movie you've seen? And it goes on from there, explaining that we all have thoughts, but we get to choose our thoughts, which is one of the basic concepts in working with our intentions. If we choose the positive thoughts, if we choose the thoughts of things that we wish to manifest, we can all have a better life. Or we can choose, alternatively, not to have any thoughts at all, in which case we could become Zen masters. But either way, we want to perhaps reject the negative thoughts, and lots of people, even adults, don't realize that they're able to reject the negative thoughts.
Yeah.
So, Kate.
Yes.
So we are about done for today, but
Okay.
I do want to recommend Imagine If Thoughts Were Balloons, written by Rico Benvenuti and illustrated by Diane Waybright, who is one of our listeners, one of our experiencers who've been on explaining her experiences. And it is published by Hermes House Press of San Juan Capistrano, California. So please order this book. It's a good one.
Yeah, it's great for small children, and it's nice to have children start thinking, okay, to use it, that's just horrible cliche, but outside the box. It is. There a lot of times children don't really think about things; they just do, and it is nice.
Yeah, beautiful, cute
it's really-
illustrations.
yeah, it
it's
really is.
really colorful,
Yeah.
really pretty book.
Yeah.
And I think reasonably inexpensive for those people who are looking for holiday gifts for little ones, grandparents and parents, and stockings and
stocking stuffers,
uncles and aunts and friends and so forth. So I think that's about it for us, Kate, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
Have any announcements? Anything coming up?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
So we're going to be off for a few weeks with the Thanksgiving holiday, but we hope to come back to you soon. But right now, let's say
Okay, farewell from
Shattered Reality.